We have Parshas Vayera, fifth reading. We are in the second plague, finishing it off. Plague of frogs. Okay. So in the second plague, frogs emerging. And Pharaoh had enough. So he asked him, please stop this. I'll listen. So verse number 7 in chapter 8. Sora hatzvardim, the frogs will depart mimcha from you, mibatecha, and from your homes, umiavadecha, and from your servants, umiamecha, and from your people. Rabba yor tisharna, they'll only remain in the river. So that's the plan. Now, in other words, that's what Moses says to Pharaoh. That's what I'll do. But Yetze Moshe v'Aaron, and they went out with Moshe and Aaron, Ein Parai, right? They left his presence from Parai. V'Yitzak Moshe, and Moshe cried out in prayer, El Hashem, to Hashem, Al Dvar Atzvardim, concerning the frogs, Asher Sam Lefare, that were brought and placed, but for Pharaoh. Rashi, v'yetze v'yitzak, that he went out and he cried, right? Miyad, she'ikosu l'mocha, immediately, that they should disappear the next day. Where Rashi is coming to. I guess, you might think that maybe he wasn't immediate with it, but he went out and he cried out. So in other words, he did it he left his presence and he cried out, prayed to God. So Rashi's saying immediately that it should be fulfilled in the following day, not immediately, because remember he said him previously, right? Pesach, you can you already put in there. Okay, that's okay. Yas Hashem kidvar Moshe, and he did Hashem as the words of Moshe, as his request. Veyamus uatzvardim, and they died, the frogs, mina batim, from the homes, mina chatzeres, from the courtyards, and mina sadis, and in the fields. Right, so they died there. Interesting, because he said about that they should disappear, right? And now it sounds like they died, kind of disappear. And the next verse, look, the next verse, Itzberu Oisam, and they were gathered. The Egyptians, they gathered them, chamarim, heaps, chamarim, heaps and heaps, bativash haaretz, and the land was repugnant. It smelled. Rashi, chamarim, chamarim. I guess he's bothered by the double language over here. Piles, piles. Tziburim, tziburim. Heaps upon heaps. Kitargumai, the Gerin Galin, as Unkeles translates it, mounds. All right, so not a term that we've had till now, so he's translating it. Biyar pare. So he saw pare. What did he see? Ki vocha, that there was relief. And he hardened his heart. Right? God didn't harden his heart. This is the second plague. He hardened his own heart. Right? And he didn't listen to them, to Moshe and to Aaron. Exactly as God said that he wouldn't. Right? But God's not hardening his heart. Pharaoh's hardening his own heart. Verse 11 in Rashi, Hichbidisli, but he kept hardening his heart. Lashon poel, who this is a verb, right? When they say, like going or traveling. Chein Hakus is my similar to the idea of he kept smiting Moab, Mishal Loi Elohim, and asking of God for him. Hika Patsua, smiting and injuring. Okay, just giving an example of the verb form that it is. Kasher Diber Hashem, as God had spoken. Heichan Diber, where did he say this? Lishma Leich and Para will not listen to you.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know how much about this it is. Hashem told Sarah the frogs will die. Sorry. So Moshe prayed. Hashem allowed Sarah the frog to die the next day. Disappear the next day.
But
The frogs died, but there was a stink in the land. But Pharaoh saw that there was relief.
well, because they were dead.
It would take a long time for all of these frogs to have to be.
I mean, what happened to them?
Yeah.
So I think the relief is from the plague itself, not, the fact that, you'd rather have dead frogs and frogs jumping all over your bed and into your oven and into your, into your bassinet, right? You'd rather have that. So the relief was from the fact that, that they weren't alive jumping all over the place. Yeah. With that, you could handle it. That you could handle, right? I mean, it's a good question. What happened with those frogs? What did they do with them? You know what? That would be medrash, but that's not, I guess it's not a issue according to simple meaning of the text. What happened. Okay. Hashem el Moshe, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, Emor el Aaron, and say to Aaron, he told him, the Teyas Madcha, spread out your staff, the Hachis Ofar, and smite the land, the earth rather, the dust of the Haris of the earth, and it will become to Kinim. Kinim is Lais, Choles Mitzrayim. Third plague in the entire land of Egypt. Rashi, 13. No, sorry, 12. Emor el Aaron, say to Aaron. Right, so this, like the other two plagues, who actualized the plague was Aaron. This one too. The other ones were why? Because it had to do with the Nile River that saved Moshe. So here Rashi explains, the soil did not deserve to be stricken by Moshe. Why? Because it protected him. Because when he killed the Egyptian, if you remember, last week at the beginning of the Parsha, when Moshe went out and he saw the Egyptian, being taking advantage of the Jew, right? So he killed him and he hit him in the sand. But Laka al Yedei Aaron, so therefore was stricken by Aaron. So since the dust of the earth kind of saved him because he hid the Egyptian by burying him under the earth, so Moshe would not strike the earth. 13. The Yasu came and they did so. The ate Aaron, and he spread Aaron his yada, his hand, b'matehu with his staff, b'yachis aretz, and he smote the dust of the earth, akinim ba'adam, and there was lice in man, mehema, and in animals. Kol afar aretz akinim, the entire dust of the earth there was turned into kinim, into lice, b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, in the entire land of Egypt. Rashi v'tiya kinam. V'tiya kinam. So kinam means means Hacharisha Hol Pedoliae in Old French, a swarm of lice.
Did this occur in Goshen as well too?
Huh?
Was the lice in Goshen as well? This is throughout Egypt. Did it also include where the Israel lived?
There's a sikh on that, and I don't remember now. Because at one point it will say, V'niflinu, that there's a separation between the Jewish people and the Egyptians. But it didn't say that yet, or it doesn't say it here. Huh? It says throughout the land, yes. And furthermore, it says throughout the land. So I don't remember now. Maybe we'll have some time. We'll take a look at what some sikha that we can find on that. But very good question. Because later it does say the idea of niflino, that it's separated and it did not affect the Jewish people. But here it's not making that statement. So I know that there's some nuance, and I don't remember now the details. Okay. V'yasu keina chartum. Guess what? Remember the last two plagues? The magicians of Egypt, they were able to do this. So, and likewise, they tried, right? The necromancers, Pilateim, with their incantations, Lahitzi Sakinim, to bring out the lice, but they were not able to. They tried, but they couldn't do it. And the lice remained on man and beast. Rashi 14. Interesting. Why weren't they able to do this? Lahitzi Sakinim, to draw forth the lice. This means to create them, to produce them from another place. And they weren't able to. What does that mean? Sheina shade shaylet, because the demon has no power on a creature smaller than a grain of barley. And the lice was smaller than a grain of barley. Why is that? Good question. Yeah. And the Khartoumim, these magicians, they said, El Para to Para, Etzbe Elokim, this is the finger of God, it is. And he hardened his heart, Pare, and he didn't listen to them. Exactly as God said. Right? Etzbe Elokim Rashi in 15. Rashi says, but that it's the finger of God. The sorcerer said that this plague is not a result of witchcraft. This is definitely from God. As Hashem had spoken, then Bara will not listen to you. Interesting. We just had that, right, in verse 11. And it's repeated over here. Same verse, same idea. Rashi brings it a second time as if you wouldn't remember from verse 11. Like we're verse 15 and verse 11 as if you wouldn't remember it. Like, why does he have to repeat it? Yeah, but what is Rashi after? My question's not on the verse, actually. Thank you. My question is not on the verse. On Rashi. It's the first time he wrote, Hey Chandiber, where did he speak? Right? And here, he just says right, Lo Yishma Lechem Pare. So it is different, but it's still, why was it necessary? Huh?
If we to bring it to our awareness, the reader's awareness.
We just had it. Why does it have to?
It's emphasis. That is
No.
the story. Yeah.
No, that you're not on my question. The fact that God is that the verse is saying as God had said, so it's emphasizing, fine. But Rashi has to give us where the verse is, where he said it. What he already gave us where that verse is, right? Shmuel, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, verse 16. V'yomer Hashem Moshe, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, Hashkim Aboiker, get up in the morning, v'satziv lifnei Paro, and stand before Pharaoh. Heina yoytze amayma, that behold, he's going out to the water. B'marte love, and you should say to him, Ko yamar Hashem. So says God, Shalachami v'avduni, send out my people that they should serve me. Ki im ein chamishaleya, verse 17, he continues, for if you do not send Sami, my nation, hineni, behold, mashliach b'cha, I'm going to send to you, v'abadecha, and to your servants, v'amcha, and to your nation, v'abatecha, and in your homes. And so, Arev, I'm going to bring, what I'm going to bring? Wild beasts, yeah, mixture. Actually, Arev means a mixture of wild beasts. And they will fill the houses of the Egyptians. Arev. Arev. And also the ground upon which you stand. Okay, let's see Rashi. We need some. Mashliach b'cha. What's this language? Mashliach b'cha. I'm sending, so inciting against him. Migarabach b'cha. We see similarly the verse in Deuteronomy, right? Same idea. Lashon shitzui, it's an expression of incitement. In Old French, incitiar. Esa'ariv, the mixture of wild beasts. Ein minichayas ra'is, harmful beasts, when achashim v'akravim, snakes and scorpions, barbuvia, in a disordered manner. Each plague that occurred, God came against the Egyptians following the tactics of wars of kings. The similar order of which a kingdom lays siege on the city. First, they ruined the water's supply to the city, right? That was the first plague, the water, right? Afterwards, they besieged them by sounding blows of the shofar, right, in order to bring fear, in order to scare and to confuse the people. And that when similarly, the frogs would croak and make noise. These have been as is explained in the Midrash. Interesting.
What's the agadic? Agadic.
God means not the simple meaning, the homiletic explanation. The homiletic explanation.
Okay.
Amen. Verse 18, final verse. V'hiflesi. Here we go. And I separated. Vayemahu on that day, as Eretz Goshen, the land of Goshen, Asher Imi, Oimed Aleha, Ami, sorry, Oimed Aleha, that in the land of Goshen, I'm separating because my nation is upon the land there. The Vilti Sham Arav, that there should not be any Arav there, any mixed animals. Leman Teidan, or you should know, Ki ani Hashem b'kerev haaretz, that I am Hashem in the midst of the land. Rashi 18. So you got what you wanted. There is a separation. The Flacy, I made a distinction. Efrashti, I separated. V'lo hifla Hashem, similarly to Hashem, that Hashem distinguished. V'chein lo niflacy mimcha, that it's not too distant from you. V'lo muvdelis. Nine. So you should know that I am Hashem in the midst of the land. Even though my divine presence is in heaven, my decrees are held up in the lower realms. Okay, let's see if we have. Okay, so we see the separation is in this one. So the question is, though, in the third, second, and the first, right? Now, from the Medrash, we know from the first, the different things, but not simple meaning.
But Egyptians also lived in the land of Goshen. So I'm wondering how the place affect the Egyptians who lived in the land. Why it affected the in Israel?
Good question.
I know the difference between them and us.
But yeah, no, but he did make, because look, the verse says, my nation. The verse said it already, right? Yeah, so, right?
The list will attack, not attack the Jews, but attack others. They're not normal lights of God. They're not what you see up in the country.
Okay. We have a question over here from the Rebbe. Remember, we asked it. We asked it before. By the Tzvardeya, by the frogs, we see something unique that that it says that there's some remembrance of the Makkah, of the plague. The other plagues, there is
remembrance of where the plague went.
actually not exactly clear on the point. But because the verse says Rak by Yaor Tisharna, that they will only remain in the river.
The frogs will remain in the river.
The verse says that, right?
After the plague.
So the Rebbe says that the purpose of the Tzvardeya was not only to bring a punishment to the Egyptians, but it was also to bring to the Nile River also a plague, because the Egyptians use it as an idolatry, right? Because now Pharaoh doesn't have control over the Nile. Remember, he says, I made the Nile. The Nile is mine and I made it, right? So he can't depend on his own strength. I mean, because you see that with God's command, it was the opposite. So therefore, to constantly remember that Pharaoh should constantly remember this, even after the plague had finished, he left the frogs in the river. So there'll always be a constant reminder that, to have a fear of God and not of, right? Okay. Now, so now we have another question, right? Another question we asked. What was the question? How come only by the fourth plague does it say that he separated between the Jewish people and the Egyptians? Right? So according to simple meaning, the Rebbe is saying that the first three plagues also affected the Jews. According to the simple meaning. Which then, that itself, we need to ask a question. If the first three plagues affected the Jewish people, how is Pare should come to a conclusion that he should send away the Jewish people? They're affected by this just like he's affected by it. So why would he conclude to let them go?
And the answer is?
1 second. The answer is that these three makkahs, it was a specifically important.
Maybe they were there to.
Well, 1 second. Let's see the Rebbe's explanation. One second. The main purpose of the blood and the Tzfardea and the frogs was to smite the Nile River, which is one of their gods. Therefore, since it was about knocking their god, therefore the entire Nile River, even that portion that was in Goshen that where the Jewish people were, right? It also had to be smitten. Because then that portion that was not smitten would be more powerful than God. God didn't have control over it, right? So it all had to be smitten. Likewise, when it comes to the lice, the purpose of the lice was to bring the magicians, the witchcrafters of the Egyptians, that they should recognize it's the finger of God. Therefore, it had to be without distinction. That happened in the entire Egypt, even where the Jewish people lived. Because if not, that it was limited, then the Egyptians would, witchcrafters would think that it is not the finger of God. But when it comes to the Arav, after the three previous ones that they understood the purpose of them, therefore, now you can make a distinction between the Jewish people, Bnei Israel, and the Egyptians. That's what the Rebbe explains. All right, folks, we'll see you shortly. Tanya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.